I'm Dan Gall with the Manual Channel, and I've got Kadhom Al-Abbas here. He is a pro pickleball coach, and we're talking about some Vatic Pro pickleball paddles today. Kadhom, let's go through them.
Let's do it. Today we're going to talk about Vatic's older line of paddles. We have the Vatic Prism Flash as well as the Vatic Pro Saga paddles. The Vatic Pro Saga is a all-court paddle, whereas the Vatic Prism is a control paddle. I think these are great paddles for an intermediate level player. At your current stage of pickleball, you're still learning the game, understanding shot mechanics, and learning how to keep control of your ball. The most common thing I see with players at your level is the inability to hit the ball where they want to. And I think paddle technology, as it modernized and gone faster, is playing a big factor into that. So today we're going to talk about these two paddles, why I think they would be a good fit for a intermediate level player and or that average player at the local park.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I struggle with consistency, which I think is one of the primary things that happen at a lower level is trouble having consistency and working on repetitive shots. So like for me right now, currently, I've been feeling like I've been popping the paddle or popping the ball, not the paddle, popping the ball up quite a bit. And so I go back to like a softer paddle versus a poppy paddle when I feel like that's happening. So do you think these will help in that scenario?
100%. So having a paddle that still gives you a good touch and feel so you know how you're hitting the ball is very important, and you get that with these paddles. What these paddles don't give you is an absurd amount of power, right, or extra pop. I define power as more of a trampoline effect where the ball is sitting in the paddle a little bit more and then spiraling off, and a pop is more of a quick rubber band snap. With these paddles, you'll be able to hit the ball where you want to and how you want it without potentially skyrocketing it up high or losing that control aspect.
Yeah, and I feel like, again, at lower levels, and I'm going to say intermediate to lower, there's this kind of like feeling people need to hit the ball really hard. And I feel like actually what's really important is placement over power,
100%.
control over power. When you try to hit the ball as hard as you can, you literally have no placement and no control.
That's a great point. It is more fun to play with a power paddle, right? Seeing that ball rocket off your paddle, seeing the reaction from your friends, it is a lot of fun. But from a consistency standpoint, if you can only hit that shot 1 out of 10 times, is it worth it, right? It may be the newest, greatest, shiniest, most expensive paddle, but is it actually helping your pickleball game? That's a really important point that some people don't think about. So with these paddles, again, you will still be able to have some fun with it, but you'll actually be able to compete and your rallies will get longer. And as you progress and play more pickleball, the longer rallies are more entertaining. Those are the points that you remember the most.
Yeah, the ones that you, afterwards, you go and have a drink and you talk about with your friends.
It's like, wow, you remember that 20-shot rally we had? That was unbelievable. And it ended on you? Oh, that sucks for you. But, but those are the memorable ones.
So let's get into this and we can talk about it while we're playing, but 100%. I'm excited to try them out.
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet. Let's go.
So as I'm hitting with this Prism Flash, a lot of players don't really care about the inner details of the paddle, how it's made, the technology inside of the paddle. What people care about is how it feels, right? Since that's the most immediate feedback you get. So as I'm hitting with this paddle, I feel quite a flushness to it, where I feel the ball almost softening off the paddle. This is a control paddle. So as you notice, my balls aren't really coming up very high, right? The paddle is kind of doing the work for me. I'm just guiding in the right direction. It feels very easy for me to control. This is a paddle I would definitely recommend for a beginner, low intermediate player because you're able to hit the shots you want to hit without potentially putting you or your partner in a bad spot with leaving a pop-up up.
And I feel like for me, like I would use the word muted when hitting with these paddles. There's not like a feeling of super poppiness.
But you also feel the ball hitting the paddle, right? There's that immediate response of, you know what, I feel like I'm not hitting it very hard because the paddle won't let you hit it that hard, which again, this is a big point for that beginner, low intermediate player, where they still feel the responsiveness on it, but they feel the muted plushness of the paddle.
100%.
Easy to control. This is a paddle I could give to anyone at a local park and they will be able to make all their shots.
I do feel like there's this, the feeling, I would call it dwell, but it's not really dwell because it's on the soft shot.
Right.
Like while we're dinking, it just feels cushioned. And that to me means less pop-ups if I'm using this paddle.
100%.
So how is the grit on these two paddles?
From a semi-pro player myself, I actually feel like I'm getting a healthy amount of grit. I'm generating a lot of spin. I'm able to add more through my mechanics without sacrificing any of the height of the ball. So a lot of times when you're trying to add more spin to a ball, you tend to overcompensate on your swing. With these paddles being a control and an all-court paddle, I'm able to add the extra movement without the risk of hitting the ball up too high.
Yeah. How important is grit for a beginner or intermediate player?
I think it is mildly important. I don't think it should be a deciding factor. Paddle technology has changed tremendously over the years. When I first started playing in 2019, I was playing with a piece of wood or a piece of plastic that was barefaced.
Like a lot of people do.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think I would say 99% of paddles built in today's day and age have some grit on it. Players like to spin the ball. It helps you to pinpoint where you want to hit. Also puts a little bit more pressure on your opponent. So I think these paddles have a very healthy amount of grit. I'm pleasantly happy with the shape and spin I'm getting on these balls.
So what about when we're not dinking and we're doing drops, resets, and serves and drives?
Yeah, same concept, right? If we're continuing talking about spin on those bigger stroke shots or the longer distance you have to hit to get to the other side of the net, you are going to get that natural spin as well, which is fantastic, without overcompensating on the height of the ball. And I keep bringing up height, right? Because in pickleball, as you progress in level, your number one objective is to make your opponents hit the ball upward, which means I want to hit it low, right? So with a paddle like this, I'm able to keep my balls low while maintaining spin, which is fantastic.
The paddles that we're currently playing with right now are the kind of older models, older technology, versus the other two that we have that are newer models. What is the difference between that technology versus the newer ones today? How does that impact how people play?
So durability is a big conversation in pickleball. Players don't want to spend $100, $200, or even $300 on some of the top-end paddles for them to bust on them in a month, 2 months, or even sooner than that. With the original style paddles, they were built with a honeycomb fiber. A delamination or a core crush paddle is when that honeycomb fiber compresses and breaks, and it gives you an extra spring and pop to the paddle. With the newer technology, a lot of organizations are leaning into foam. Foam can't compress. The cells do not break because they have no cells. So those typically have a longer longevity to them, if you would. They last longer. They may feel a little bit different, the response, but from a durability standpoint, those do last longer. Also depends on who you are as a player. For myself, I am not sold on the touch and feel of a foam paddle yet, since it feels different than what I've been playing with for the last 6 years of being on a pickleball court. If you look at professional pickleball, most of them aren't playing with foam paddles since durability is not a concern for them. So the change in paddle technology partially is kind of updating and staying modern with times. How can we change paddles to either help in whatever aspect, but also durability is a huge piece of that conversation.
So you brought up something which was core crushing on the paddles, which sounds like it's a positive thing, right? You get some extra speed, but actually it's not. It's a negative thing, right?
100%. So you're wearing safety glasses, right? The eyes are the one spot of your body that you can get seriously hurt at. And so I actually recommend to all my students that you should be wearing safety glasses. When it comes to core crushing, when paddles are developed, they have certain threshold or requirements by the governing body. So spin cannot precede a certain number, power cannot precede a certain number. We do not want pickleball players playing with baseball bats on the court, if you would, right? Because that can be very dangerous. So when it comes to delamination, it's taking it from a current legal threshold of power and it adds extra, which exceeds the requirement, which makes it illegal, if you would, for regular play or tournament play specifically. So safety is a big portion. With a foam paddle, you may not see that same risk since that effect does not occur with foam versus the honeycomb fibers here.
Okay, awesome. Should we grab the other paddles then?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's see what those are like. So we've got these other paddles, the newer Vatic Pro paddles.
Yep.
VSOL Power, which is a 16 mil foam.
Yep.
And
VSOL Pro, which is a 16 millimeter foam. And the millimeter talks about the thickness of the paddle.
Okay.
So these paddles are a little bit different than the last two that we hit with and talked about. These are part of Vatic's newer line of paddles. This is their first introduction into the foam world, right? Kind of updating their paddle technology here. I really like these paddles. They are a little bit more mainstream in regards to kind of the trending of paddles. Paddle technology when I started playing was like what we just played with, a little softer, a little bit more plush. If I wanted to hit the ball with more power, I had to generate that myself. These paddles kind of take some of that work for you. What I like to describe these paddles as is driving a maybe electric vehicle as opposed to a manual like we did back in the day, right?
That's going to cause a lot of controversy.
100%. That's why I didn't name any specific electric vehicles.
Yeah.
But this, the general theme is with these paddles, the paddles will do some of the work for you, right?
Okay.
Again, these paddles have a healthy amount of grit, as you can feel. So you'll be able to generate a decent amount of spin without having to be too risky or generate it yourself. But what these paddles do is give you an extra little pop and power on your shots. Power line specifically is a power paddle, which, like I defined earlier, you get that little bit more dwell or that trampoline effect where the ball will come off after sitting a little bit longer, help you generate some extra oomph on your shots. The VSOL Pro has some power, but it has a little bit more pop. So it's a healthy mixture of having that trampoline and rubber band effect happening at once.
What's the difference between power and pop? Because like for me, that sounds like the same thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
So power, you notice the extra power on the paddle on your ground strokes a little bit more. When you're swinging and swinging through that ball, you'll generate a healthy amount of power. The ball will come off your paddle really nicely, ideally put some pressure on your opponents. On this paddle, it is the same concept, but it comes off faster. So the difference is power, the ball will sit a little bit longer. Pop, it will spring off your face a little bit longer. In my personal opinion, you notice a big difference at the kitchen line. So when you're in a hands battle or I'm looking to hit a good counter, on a power paddle, as I'm swinging through the ball, I will feel that extra oomph and put that pressure on my opponents. With a poppy paddle, I don't have to swing through it as much. It will reflect off quicker.
So even just like a quick reset or even a block will come back faster.
Or higher, right? And this is where I would recommend these paddles for more intermediate advanced player, because the paddle is generating some of that pop and power itself. It may require the player to watch that or be a little bit more mindful of it, right? Like we were dinking with the other two paddles. We didn't have to do much work. The balls went over the net. We just had to guide it in play. With this one, as we play here in a moment, you'll notice that you may have to exert a little bit more energy or thought around how hard you're holding the paddle, trying to get it to where you go, where you want it to go, and then keeping your balls low. Because again, ultimate goal is to keep our balls low, unattackable. These may require a little bit more effort to do so. But as you progress in level, the assumption is you have the ability to keep them low. This helps you on the harder shots or the attacking or the countering, etc.
Yeah, and that made me think of basically, again, intermediate to lower level players where the paddle is meant to do more of the work for you.
Correct.
Means more precision
Yes.
and control of how you angle your hand or how you follow through or all that other stuff, which if you don't know how to do that or are not working on that, that results in more pop-ups,
Correct.
balls going out because you're hitting it too hard, things like that. Like swings are bigger versus smaller, compact swings.
Absolutely. Right? You nailed it, right? At the level I play at, and as you progress up in level, the game does play a little faster, right? And so most players want to keep up with the speed of the game, so they want a technology or a paddle that allows them to play that style of pickleball. That being said, as a moderately aggressive player like myself, I like having some speed in my hand. But there are different styles of players, right? Some players like to slow the ball down in every situation and grind it out, hit lots of dinks, or look to reset and drop a lot of balls. Maybe this paddle may not fit that style of play, regardless if you're a low, intermediate, or even an advanced player. So that is something you want to consider as you progress up in level. You know, what kind of style of pickleball do you play, and how does this paddle help you do that? So what I look for in a paddle is I'm looking for an extension of my hand, right? If I want to hit the ball hard, will the paddle allow me to do that? If I want to hit it soft, am I able to control said paddle to hit that soft shot? I feel like with these two paddles in particular, I'm able to do that as well.
What about body bags? Which one's better for body bagging?
Let's find out.
Oh no.
I want you to tell me how this feels different than the other one, right? You went from an all-court paddle to a power paddle. What are you noticing, Dan?
Not as muted or soft.
Yeah.
I have to swing through a little bit more on these dinks than before.
Yeah. From my perspective, receiving your balls, I feel like they're coming off a little faster. Your balls are a little higher than before, which it plays a factor into what you're playing with, right?
Yeah, confidence, I think, is a big key.
And it doesn't look like, in my perspective, that you're playing any different. You're not hitting shots any differently. The paddle is just doing a little bit more work for you. As we speed up the ball, so if we started volleying a little bit, you'll notice that the ball's coming back a little faster, right? With my pop on my paddle, I'm able to really get that ball back at you before you realize.
Oh.
Right? As I'm speeding it up, you'll find that it'll be harder for you to maintain.
Whew.
Here.
Definitely faster.
For sure.
And this is where small movements matter.
100%.
Because I am definitely having much bigger movements.
But also, because the ball's coming back faster, I'm putting pressure on you, right?
Yeah.
You're not able to read the ball as easily. Ooh. You're finding yourself getting jammed up a little bit. And it's just a different game, right? These paddles align with more modern style pickleball, where the game has played faster. Balls are moving faster. Paddle technology is allowing players to hit the ball with not as much effort while still maintaining that speed and power and pop that everyone's looking for.
I kind of like getting that speed without having to hit as hard, but just like what you did right there, you hit a much harder shot at me.
Right.
I can feel it a lot more as well. Like I have to kind of prep and tighten.
You're consciously thinking about maintaining control, right?
Yes.
And for me, it's effortless, right? I don't have to exert as much energy and the ball goes pretty fast, right? I didn't swing very big. I just made good contact and the ball rocketed towards you. Nice shot.
Yes!
I'll get him back, don't worry.
Oh no.
Oh, now he's nervous.
No.
Someone's nervous. He knows it's coming. Oh, got him.
Even with knowing it was coming, I can't do anything. Oh.
It's the paddle. Paddle helps me. But even me, right? Because this paddle has a little bit more pop and power, the sweet spot may be a little smaller. So I have to actively think about hitting the sweet spot on the paddle. I don't get that extra cushion from the other paddles that allows me to get away with some mishits, right? And that's a challenge, right? A lot of beginner, low intermediate, high intermediate players even aren't watching the ball hit their paddle. With a softer all-court or control paddle like the other ones, I can get away with maybe missing the sweet spot. So every paddle has the ideal hitting zone, which typically is in the center half of the paddle, right? On these paddles, if you miss that spot, you may not get the same response as you would hitting the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So you have to exert a little bit more mental or conscious effort or thought to make sure that you're hitting the ball in the right spot so it responds the same way. As you're beginning your pickleball journey, your number one objective is to get the ball over the net as many times as you can, right? As you progress up in level, that's where maybe some shot placement, location, your decision-making plays a bigger factor. As you get up in level, you understand the paddle a little bit more. You understand your technique and how you prefer to play pickleball. That's why it's easier for an advanced player to pick up a paddle like this and find their sweet spot. For another player, though, they may find themselves mishitting the ball a little bit more and not feeling like the paddle is doing what they want. When in reality, it may not be the paddle, or it may be, right, depending on the player or person.
Yeah, and then there's the benefit of this, which is like the sweet spot is smaller, but you're able to be more aggressive with it.
Correct.
Without as much effort of doing that. And then,
100%.
doing these speed ups or volleys is a great example of that, right?
Yeah, if we did that same drill with the other paddle, I know that we probably would have been in a little bit more of an even playing field here. The paddles only allow you to hit the ball so hard. With these paddles, we're able to let loose a little bit more, right? The ball flies a little bit more. We're having a little bit more fun. But in a live game for an amateur player, is that worth it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I tell all my students is, you may be able to hit that one specialty shot 1 out of 10 times, but you're missing it 9 times in a row, right? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
With these paddles, that 1 out of 10 shot is going to feel fantastic. But for an amateur player, for a beginner, low intermediate player, I'd recommend going for one of those paddles, because instead of hitting 1 out of 10, you may hit 6 out of 10, right? It may not be as fun or as flashy, but it's consistent.
And
right?
which one of these paddles you prefer?
I personally prefer the paddle I'm playing with now, which is the Vatic Pro Flash.
Okay, let's swap up and let me see if I can get some Kadhom power out of this paddle.
Let's do it. So there's a difference in these paddles, right?
Oh yeah, this one has...
So the paddle you're playing with now has a little bit of a crisper feel to it.
That's
right?
a great way to describe it. I was struggling.
It's springy, right? Where this one feels a little muted. I mean, we're talking a couple percentage points here. And for the average player, you may not notice that difference. But for someone that's played with hundreds of different paddles and progressed through all levels of the sport, I notice a difference here.
Yeah, you can totally feel it when you go from one paddle to another. Like,
yes.
I would actually almost describe that one as an in-between the Honeycomb like softness feel.
Yes.
And this one, which is very crisp. It's almost, if I think of it like a wood paddle feel, almost, it's literally like no absorption.
So
I feel.
I've allowed a few of my students and friends play with these paddles, and even though the Flash paddle is my personal favorite, a lot of players prefer this Vatic Power paddle. Not all players play like I do, where I like to be very big on my counters and initiate a lot of attacks. So they like the feel of this paddle a little bit more. This has been the popular choice by most people that have tried these paddles out. But again, stylistically, it applies to the general advanced player a little bit more.
Yeah. How much of a looking, like this was blue, that one's red, other ones were purple and orange, right? Like, I feel like that obviously makes somewhat of a decision. Is like, how does a paddle look to you and in your hand when you're admiring it at home? That's obviously not a performance thing, but these are all pretty much look the same, except for color, the print.
I actually like that, right? I think you're taking away that extra choice from people to make them have to make that decision, right? Do I want the cute, flashy, bright colored paddle, or do I want more of a muted, simple paddle with the simple color pop?
Yeah.
I personally prefer paddles like this. It's a little bit more sleek in design. And it simplifies my decision here, right? If you give me 3 paddles and they're all flashy and loud, I don't know if I want that, personally speaking. But I may not be the general public, right? So I don't think in my decision, the way the paddle looks doesn't play that big of a factor. I think performance plays better.
Okay. Sweet.
What about you? Does
I like it too, because at this point, then it's for me, a paddle's a paddle. Like, it's an extra thing if it looks kind of cool, but at the same time, looks can go out of style pretty quick.
Sure.
And depending on how long you like to hold on to a paddle, it's a lot easier to go, you know what, I'm just going to upgrade this one and it looks exactly the same and I don't have to worry about it, but I can play these other ones. And I don't know, it's not a big factor, but I do think in general, people will buy things. If they don't know how they perform, they'll buy them on looks.
100%. We both know someone very close to us that will buy the prettiest, newest paddle on the market, and that's totally fine.
Addicted to paddle shopping.
Correct. But we also know that they play with a paddle, they purchase a paddle based on how it looks, and then plays with it once and doesn't like how it plays. So I encourage my students and players I meet to feel the paddle first, right? Get an understanding of how does it feel in your hand? How does it feel when you're hitting your shots? I think that should be the #1 objective. Of course, if you find a paddle that feels great and looks better than the rest, go for it, right?
So we all need a friend that is like this person we're talking about,
Right.
that likes to buy a lot of paddles so that you can try them before you buy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Should we do some like drives and other
ground
shots to
strokes.
see how these feel?
For sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. Oh no.
I felt like your balls were heavier, right? The ball sat on your paddle a little bit longer, took a little bit longer to come off your paddle face, which exerted extra energy, which put more pressure on me, right? So stylistically, that might be a better paddle for you because of how you currently play pickleball.
Yeah, and this one had a little bit, I could feel the dwell time, and also on those resets and so forth, like I knew I could just let the paddle do the work. So don't move my paddle. Oh my God, Kadhom's coming with something. And was able to, I was fairly happy with my defense.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was good. Nice
Thank
work.
you. So like for you, the Vatic Pro is the one you like.
Correct.
It's a poppy paddle.
Yep.
Foam. This is the V-Sole Power. I actually like this one probably out of all of them. I was playing with that one earlier and I liked it, but after just playing right now, I've changed my mind. This one is also foam. Both of these are 16 mil.
Yep. And all the paddles we have are in that hybrid shape. And so there are differences versus elongated, wide body, and hybrid. Hybrid is obviously a mix of both, right? It's not a super long paddle with a long handle. It's also not a short paddle face with a short handle, right? So it's kind of a mixture of both. This is your average style paddle, if you would.
Yeah, so what's the benefit of this versus an elongated or
a wide body?
Wide body, yeah.
So there's a difference in paddle shapes. So elongated paddles tend to have a little bit more power because you're able to swing through that ball a little bit more. Not to get too technical, but there's a number called swing weight, which helps determine how fast you're maneuvering that paddle in your hand.
Yeah.
So with elongated paddles, that swing weight number, it tends to be slightly higher, so it doesn't flow as quickly, but for someone with a tennis background, they prefer that, right? Because in tennis, you have a really big swing and you're playing with a racket with strings, that ball sits on a little bit more. So that's a style of player that prefers elongated. The wide body is a little quicker in your hand, easier to manipulate, and tend to have a bigger sweet spot. So from my opinion, I think elongated paddles are great for the ground strokes and the drives and things at the baseline, but at the kitchen line, you may find it easier to maneuver your paddle and be a little quicker with a wide body. Hybrid just gives you a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I know that in the past you've told me wide body fits me well.
Yes.
And I still like playing with the wide body, but I've moved more towards a hybrid. And the other thing that I like too is I feel like the hybrid has a little bit longer of a handle, so you can do
the two hands on it. Yep.
Two-hand, and same with elongated, right? Where most wide bodies are shorter paddles.
Correct.
Handle, yeah.
So I played with a wide body for probably 3 years of my playing journey. I only recently went to elongated since I'm looking to be a bigger threat from the baseline. I do feel like I get a little bit more power on my shots with elongated, but I like to play with a 14 millimeter paddle. These are all 16, so 14 millimeters, to get into that real quick, tend to have a little bit more pop because it's thinner material being used, so it springs off a little bit more. So when you combine the elongated paddle with the benefits of that with the thinner design, it kind of gives me the best of both worlds, if you would.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun. Thank you, Kadhom, for all your knowledge, your fun, and the body bags that you gave me. I probably will take a couple days for me to recover from that. If you like this, you want to see more manual pickleball coverage, like, subscribe, comment below. We appreciate you watching, and Kadhom and I are going to go and play some more. Let's get it.